Good morning everybody, and a warm welcome to Berringer and the low cost layout with me, the Queen of Lean. And today we're going to be doing something slightly different for this video, and generally I'm giving you a layout update and telling you how things are going and all the rest of it. But today I wanted to talk to you about almost like the making of Berringer and ways of saving money. So basically it's just to keep the cost down for this layout, because obviously there's many of us that have got layouts and money isn't always readily available, as is in my case, and so you have to get a bit creative and a bit inventive of ways of saving money. And I've come across a number of ways to save money in my own layout, which I will pass on to you and demonstrate to you, and some will apply, some will not apply, some won't really be that overly bothered about saving money, but this is for those who are a bit money conscious, and basically just to give a few tips of how I've saved some money in case anybody wants to use any of those for their own layouts. And so without further ado, we will get on and do the talk. So just before we start, I thought I'd give you a bit of a tour of the layout, just so you can sort of see how far and how big it is, so you can sort of gauge just how big it is and put things into perspective in terms of how I've saved money on this sort of size layout. And I'm standing in the middle of the living area of my studio flat and you're currently looking at New Shot from a distance. And as you can see there, you can see Offered on the Hill there, station right next to it, just on the fridge there. Now you can see also that the bridge section is also in the retracted position, and that comes across, if I take you round to the TMD, what was the TMD, which is now going to be an additional 3 sidings, fiddle yard. That's the mini fiddle yard, that's the exit point. And if I pan you back round, you've got the new section, which I've literally just done last night, and then behind there you've got Moorwood station, and obviously you've got the line that runs, the branch that runs from Offered on the Hill as it winds its way down towards the canal side. Sorry if you can't quite pick it out because of the sunlight. And as you can see, there's the canal side, which is still to be done. And then obviously there's the cutting on the other side, the village pub, crossing over the bridge. And as you can see, the branch just is the nearest to you. And then obviously you've still got the cutting through the middle, and you can see the Bedford van through the archway, which is a bit that I still need to tackle. And the main lines run through the back of that. Obviously there's the road bridge which I made. And then as you come into Berringer station, you've got the signal box here, where the branch then connects to platform number 1, and then you've got the main station, and then as we sort of move along, it runs underneath the town scene into Berringer platforms 4 and 5, which is the underground section of it. Runs under the town scene, and there's a town there. It runs across the front door, and then we've come to the final end of Berringer, which is where the B&Q is, and where the tapered bit is of the sky. That is where it finishes, and then it leads on to the storage area. So that briefly concludes the layout tour. It's a reasonable sized layout. and I don't have endless funds on it, and obviously other priorities in life mean that we don't always get to spend as much money on the layout as I would like. However, there are ways of saving money, and one of the ways of saving money is scratch building your own buildings. And one of the buildings I scratch built is the B&Q right in front of you. And I've said this in the past, you can buy Bachmann Sincraft buildings or Hornby buildings, or just ready to plant buildings in general, wherever they may come from, and generally speaking they cost a lot of money. And something like this, just made out of card and plastic card, can be made at a fraction of the cost, and you can have a unique building to your layout. And that's just one of the ways. And I grant you that for some of you, scratch building isn't probably your forte and you'd rather buy ready to plant buildings, which is fair enough. I personally just like to have a go, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, okay, no harm done. Now, as far as the actual construction of the layout is concerned, the only bit of money I've really spent on construction on this layout is, if I zoom out, it's literally this bit you're looking at now. That bit and the whole dressing area where the field yard is down the end there. That is the only bit. Everything else has been recycled. All the wood's been recycled. I was fortunate or unfortunate in terms of one of my neighbours left and basically dumped a load of furniture outside, wooden furniture, which was salvaged to create a lot of the framework. So I was very fortunate in that respect. So there's a lot of recycling on this layout as well. If I pan around here, again, this is just a bridge that's been made out of card, my own bridge. I mean, obviously it doesn't look like much right now, but once it's painted and everything up it will look pretty good. And again, it's just another cheap, effective way of buying things. Again, scratch building, Woolworths, Blockbusters and the NCP. These are all buildings that were scratch built and made through not very much money and bits and bobs lying around. Something like this was just like a scrap piece of plastic which I had lying around, and it was just painted up, and it just gives that impression and a bit of extra detail. Again, the bus station is actually also scratch built. Again, it's just plastic card, scrap wood out of the scrap wooden box. The concertina wall right on the back, the black, that's just a piece of scrap card that was just folded up. The canopy here was made out of matchsticks. So again, that's something that's very cheap and readily available at any supermarket. And then if you come to the actual station building itself, that was actually a second-hand building. So although it's a resin building, it wasn't a full price building that I bought. As well as saving money on the station building, money's also been saved on the platforms. And the platforms have been saved money in terms of basically you can, for example, you can get Hornby sections and they can be very pricey for lengths, and also you can also see the joins. This the whole of Berringer station, the whole platform, they're made out of MDF wood, and these pieces of MDF wood for the platforms were actually offcuts from my local Homebase store. The Homebase actually provide a wood cutting service, and so people don't always tend to keep all their bits and pieces. They just take what I need, and sometimes they leave their offcuts, and these are strips or offcuts that people just think, oh, I can't do anything with it, but I could actually do something with these strips. And basically these platforms were probably made, I think they were about £1 in total, to be honest. I think it's just 50p for a couple of strips of MDF, and I've got this whole length of platform all the way down to here for £1. So that was another way of saving a huge amount of money on platforms. Also the lips on the platforms, the platform edges, which is all of this. That is all matchsticks, and it was, I have to say, it was a painstaking and laborious task, I'll be honest, but it was well worth doing. It didn't take very long to glue, and again, a box of matchsticks costs next to nothing, and effectively you've got two platforms for full length platforms. Well, I say full length, for me it's about well, as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3 sorry if I just do it like that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus the 73 with its nose sticking out on it, which is plenty for me. I mean, generally speaking, once the fiddle yards are up and running, you'll generally have the EMUs, the full cart EMUs, and maybe the parcels train pulling into here, as opposed to these length trains, because they'll probably be like, I wouldn't say expresses, but they'll go from one end to the other end directly. Also, more examples of scratch building can be found in terms of the station building, the waiting area, that's completely scratch built. The roof was made out of sandpaper as well, and a bit of card, and just bits and pieces from the wheels kit. Also, all the windows that you can see along here on the waiting room have all been salvaged also from Metcalfe buildings, and that's also another good tip as well. I mean, I keep all the stuff that I get from Metcalfe, and there isn't much Metcalfe on my layout. The only Metcalfe buildings I have really on this layout are the row of terraced houses, and basically all the extras were salvaged, and basically anything that could be used was reused. And a prime example of that was on these was on the waiting room, and so I've used that. And also when I come to build the low relief station building over from Allwood, I've still got some left over, so they'll be incorporated as well. So again, it's another way of saving money. It's just, you know, you can reuse these bits and pieces rather than just throw them away. A mention should be given to my footbridge, and there's a number of reasons for giving this footbridge a mention, because it's always featured in the opening shot whenever I introduce Berringer, because it has got that Welcome to Berringer sign on the top of it. And this is another footbridge that has saved me a lot of money. This footbridge has been modified heavily, and basically those of you who've been following Berringer for some time will have known that I did have an issue with a footbridge in terms of I couldn't quite find the right one for my layout. And there's various ones on the market, Batman, Hornby, and they all do various footbridges. And I did have a bit of a gripe some time ago that Hornby did this footbridge, and I think I bought it for a layout many years ago when I was living at home, and it cost me about £8 or something like that at the time. And these days the same footbridge is now costing about 20 odd quid or something like that, I think it is now. I don't know how much the Scencraft ones are either. Either way, they weren't really quite the right style anyway. But I come across this footbridge, and it's bought from my actually it's bought from an exhibition, and it's an old triangle footbridge, and this footbridge has cost me £5, and it was in excellent shape, and like I said, it has been modified extensively, but for a £5 you can't really go wrong. And again, going to swap meets or exhibitions, you can find bargains, so that's another sort of tip. Just keep an eye out on these little stalls, and you never know what you'll find. The station seating, that was bought from an exhibition second hand for £1 or something like that, for about 2 or 3 sets, 2 or 3 benches. The waiting room at the back is also a second hand building. Excuse me. And the retaining wall, both the light brick and the dark brown at the back there, were also scratch built. And again, these are things that can cost a lot of money. I mean, you can go for the foam ones that you get, and they're very, very well detailed. I'm not knocking them at all, It's just that the pricing can be quite expensive if you need quite a lot of it, and so that's pretty much why I try and keep the costs down, and I try and find other ways of doing it. And also because you get to actually customize it, and it will fit to exactly your requirements, whereas if you buy some of the ready to plant stuff, they might not necessarily quite fit, and then you've got to modify it. At least this way you're just kind of doing it as you're going along. All points of these layouts are manual. There's no point motors on any of these on any of these turnouts. There's just, as you can see, that one just pop in, and that's just used by piano wire. It's just a rod, and you just flick it backwards and forwards, and it's the same. As you can see, there's a couple there, and actually on these ones down the bottom you can see I've just put the NSC branding on them. Excuse me. And they are all connected to the points underneath, and it's just literally just push in, push out for all the various points on the layout. There's two reasons for that. One is that electrics are not exactly my strong suit, but also I actually like pressing the switches. I like having switches, as you can probably tell from the actual main control panel, because to me it's how I was brought up with railway modelling and all the rest of it. I like the idea of having to work for it, and to be truthful with you, it's not my cup of tea to use an iPad or an iPhone or whatever it is to control my trains. I don't see the fun in it. That's just my own personal view. I prefer the more hands-on approach to railway modelling personally. So as we move along the layout, some more bits and pieces. That was also this extension here for the branch was also recycled. Basically I'd knocked down a chest of drawers which was fallen to pieces, and I salvaged the wood from that to create the extension. So again, that didn't cost me anything for the extension for the branch line. Also the pub up here, that's also a second-hand example of a pub. And then after as you come along here and to come to more wood, probably one of the things I did spend the money on was the incline set from the Wood and Scenics, and that's because I wanted to get it right, and I couldn't seem to get it right trying to do it my own way. So it seemed to be simple to use the Wood and Scenics incline set. So that's probably about the only thing I've really spent the money on, to be truthful. Again, Moorwood Station is just made out of chipboard, as you probably saw in the previous video, and it's just got a layer of card on the top, and the sides are made out of plasticard. The same for the retaining wall, it's just card and plasticard. So again, this is all cheap ways of doing these things. It doesn't have to necessarily cost a lot of money. The footbridge, again, that's also scratch built, and that is all that is very simple to make your own footbridge. It's literally just layer the card step by step, step by step, step by step, until you get the gradient you want. And that's what that is. That's all that is. It's nothing terribly exciting. It's nothing particularly difficult if you want to have a go. So that's kind of another thing that's done to save some money. And one of the main things I wanted to show you, and probably the inspiration for this video actually, is this. It doesn't actually look like much at the moment, but I was working on this. This is like what I did last night, and basically I was working on this kind of like disused kind of line. Obviously this is still rough and ready, it hasn't been done anything, but before I did anything to it I wanted to show you. This is like just like a mound or more dock to go through this cutting which leads off into sort of like the disused line. That's pretty much what that's about. And the reason for showing you this is before I was using the shoe polish, and that worked out very, very well. And however, I finished with the shoe polish, and I had a bit of a brainwave, and I thought, I wonder if this would work Now bear with me a minute, it doesn't seem it seems a little strange, but it does actually work. This is actually coffee, and so if you go to your local superstore or whatever supermarket and just buy the basics cheap nasty coffee, what this is newspaper covered in Mod Rock, and then after a layer of PVA glue on top, and then coffee on the top, the coffee powder on the top, and basically it will give you this kind of real browny textured look, and it's really effective, I have to say. It looks a bit rough and ready at the moment, which is fine because it's only literally just finished. I haven't really kind of dealt with it, apart from this is literally how it was left overnight. And then after, obviously I put a layer of greenery on top of that, and obviously it will all start to blend in, and it is such a cost-effective way of saving money, instead of buying all these little pots and things like that, individual pots which maybe you only use a little bit and all the rest of it. So if you want to try that idea, feel free to do so, because it is worth trying, and it was just literally an experiment, but I'm really quite happy with it. I mean, once it's all kind of done and dusted and everything like that, I think it will look great. So that's a good sort of like first coat of things, and so that's just a real good way of doing that. Also, adhesives, I've said this before and I'll say it again, I've got these adhesives from Poundland, and if you go through a lot of it like I do, and I do go through a lot of it, then believe me, it's you go to Poundland and buy these adhesives, PVAs, glue, and it will save you a lot of money rather than going to Wicks's all the time to buy it. And it's really it really is a top tip. I mean, because a bottle of glue will cost you £5 or so from Wicks's or Home Base or wherever, and Poundland obviously will cost you £1, but obviously if you buy 2 it will cost you £2 for the litre. They do it in half litres, but it will go a long way as well, and the consistency is actually better for railway modelling because it's slightly thinner, so it's actually better and it goes on easier. If we move along to Offord on Hill, which is where we are currently, again some more bushes on the corner. That's also come from the seam section, which has been salvaged, but there isn't much in terms of money saving, although this little footpath, which is also scratch built, and that's just matchsticks. That's pretty much it. And again, if you come over to New Shop, you'll see that the point work is just hands-on point work. And this little beauty was donated to me by Graham at Lakeside, so also that comes as a nice gift, which is still sitting proudly on my layout. And so these are all different ways of sort of like gifts and scratch building, and these are all little ways of saving money and people just general kindness, and so thank you, Graham, for that. As you come along, the China clay works, that is also scratch built. That's also just made out of card, scrap wood and just plastic card, and it's not as daunting as you think. And this China clay is just a bit of extra Mod Rock, a bit of newspaper and some talcum powder. And also if you come along here, we've just got this building here, which is just completely scratch built. Sorry, I should rephrase that. That's actually a second-hand building. So there's lots of ways to save money, and hopefully some of this stuff has been useful. And I'll leave you with a shot of the signal box, which sits nicely on my layout. And thanks for watching. Feel free to comment and subscribe, and I hope some of this can help you. So bye for now.